fell in sheets of liquid lead that threatened to peel the skin from Elias's face. He huddled beneath a jagged overhang of slate, his fingers fumbling with a compass that no longer knew which way was north. The needle spun with a frantic, sickening speed, a silver blur against the brass casing. This was the cursed range, a place where geography was a suggestion and the earth had a memory longer than any man. Elias wiped a mixture of mud and sweat from his brow, his breath hitching in his chest. He was a man of lines and measurements, a cartographer who had once been celebrated for his precision. Yet here, the world refused to be measured. "It is moving again," he whispered, his voice cracking, his getting hadden. It was drang, there was star in it sammenfang in fingers, and... You scrambled upward, his boots slipping on the slick, black stone. The mountain groaned beneath him, a tectonic rumble that felt like a predator's purr. As he climbed, the very texture of the rock began to change. Where there should have been granite, there was something that felt suspiciously like calcified bone. The cracks in the cliffside looked like closed eyelids, and the trickling water tasted of salt and copper. He was no longer climbing a mountain. He was crawling over the carcass of his own conscience. Every handhold felt like a betrayal, the stone yielding slightly under his weight as if it were soft tissue. "You always were a coward, Elias," a deeper voice boomed from the mist. It was Captain Thorne. "The mountain is to a mole make contractions of a voice." "Stop it," he screamed at the peak above him. The air here was thin and smelled of old paper and rot. He looked down at his legs and cried out in terror. His shins had flattened, the flesh stretching and hardening into a substance that felt like heavy vellum. Fine lines, like topographical markings, were etching themselves into his calves in a deep, bruising purple. 500 feet, 1,000 feet. The numbers appeared on his skin, marking the elevation of his own descent into madness. He tried to rub them away, but ink was inside him, flowing through his arteries. The walls were closing in, pulsing with a slow, rhythmic beat that matched Elias's frantic heart. He had to exhale just to squeeze his torso through the narrow gaps. The stone was warm now, and a sticky, resinous sap coated the walls, smelling of pine and dried blood. He felt the mountain's thoughts pressing against his cranium, a chaotic jumble of every traveler who had ever died in these peaks. Their memories were being forced into his mind. They didn't attack. They simply watched, their silence more damning than any accusation. Elias pulled himself for the lip of the chimney, gasping for air that felt like needles in his lungs. He was halfway to the summit, but the terrain ahead was a nightmare of shifting geometry, where the horizon and the ground seemed to swap places with every flash of lightning. You can't reach the muck, but the more he fought, the faster he sank. He saw his daughter's face in the sludge, her eyes wide and accusing. He reached out to her, but his hand was now a flat, rectangular sheet of vellum. The arrogant cartographer, the weeping drunk in a tavern, and the hollowed-out husk he was now. The wind picked up the shards and whirled them around him, a cyclone of sharp regrets. One shard sliced across his cheek, but instead of blood, a stream of black ink trickled down his chin. He stopped this phrase and it came from a losing. Can Sheridan Rand in the Conas K. He just turned back a present essence you were you wearing and self-conne. Praying his difference were constants instead. District to became. Tell us along there the shallow. He preached the summit ice. Inside the ice, Elias could see the frozen bodies of those he had failed, their faces preserved in eternal screams. He didn't look away this time. He climbed past Thorne, past his daughter, past the men who had trusted him. He used his paper-thin hands to grip the freezing surface, the edges of his limbs tearing and fraying in the wind. He was a tattered flag of the lines on his own body began to fade. The parchment skin softened, turning back into flesh and bone. The shadows began to dissipate, turning into harmless mist. The mountain didn't want his life. It wanted the truth to be mapped. When he finished the last line, the mountain went still. The shifting stopped Elias for the past of feeling my creaked. There was pouring and belay. He could stir